You're listening to Edge Radio TV. The views and opinions expressed in this program are that of the host or guests, and not the Edge Radio Network or its advertisers or affiliates.
E.R.A.S.E is an organization. It's a movement. We're talking about unity. We're talking about unity. So we're aimed to taking down the system of race by educating, enlightening, informing, and positively debating with those who have counterviews.
And welcome to Edge Radio's Talk About Unity show. I'm Carlin Charleston. I'm here with my co-host Richard Jennings, and we're glad to have you in the house today. And today we got a great show lined up for you. Today's show is entitled While You Weren't Looking.
What you looking at?
So what's going on while you weren't looking? So a lot of things happening. And as it says there, if you weren't figuratively speaking here yesterday, then you might not recognize today. Things are changing at breakneck speeds, and lots is going on. So before we get started on our show, I want to welcome my co-host, Richard Jennings. Welcome, Richard. Glad to have you back.
Thank you.
Back in the house.
I'm so glad to be back, but I had a great trip to Florida with just my crew. And wow, was that a good trip. Normally, we're there interacting with other people and, always got some work we have to do. No work, completely unplugged. Did not return any phone calls.
Were you off the grid or still on the grid?
I was on the grid, but, I just, postponed all the return phone calls and nobody got mad. Everybody's happy.
Oh, cool.
We're refreshed. Panama City, Destin, there's a little town called Rosemary Beach in between. And I just want you to know,
I'm trying to see your tan. You
man, I got a tan.
Well, you're getting pretty good there, man. They gonna recognize us after a while. 6'5" and 5'5".
Yeah.
That's the only distinguishing feature.
Do you remember the show Twins?
Yeah. Danny DeVito.
Yeah, that's right, and Arnold. Well, it was the feel there in Florida. Regardless of what some people say, America is getting better. This whole COVID thing, and some of the statistics and data that we were talking about yesterday. And we understand there's people that are immune compromised and have some other stuff going on, and they really are anxious and they need to wear the mask, and we're not trying to discount that. But there in the area that we were at, everybody was in great moods. Nobody was wearing masks. Everybody's piled into this restaurant kind of district thing, and it was just, man. It was
Florida's
just
been like that for a while, huh? I mean, Florida. Did they ever really have a shutdown in Florida? I don't know if they did.
I don't know, but
I don't think they did.
I love the way it felt, and but we got snapped back into reality because federal rules are you're on a plane, you have to wear a mask, and apparently our stewardess, she got blew up. Got in trouble or whatever because she had to fill out all this paperwork. She's like, I don't want to write anybody up.
What, getting on while you're riding?
We're getting ready to take off.
Okay.
And you have to have your mask on, and apparently I didn't have mine on as well as I should, and some other people, and so you don't want to get in trouble, and you could get fined, you could get arrested, and anyway, she calmed down. I apologized, and so it's all good. But Florida is doing pretty good. So I feel refreshed. I played in those just crystal sand beaches and played in the waves.
Were you saying Florida's got better beaches than Texas and better beaches than Galveston?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think we all know that. So no need to argue about that.
Yeah. So that's my deal. I'm glad to be back. Yeah. Wish you could have gone. Maybe you need to go next time.
Yeah.
That'd been fun.
Yeah. Oh, I got time. I got some trips coming up where I'll be in Florida, and I've got Georgia next month, and so I got some things coming up. I'll get some beach time. I'll get my tan on. I'll catch up to you.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Yeah.
What else is going on? What about the Olympics?
Ooh,
you paying attention? My wife is like addicted. She's stuck in front of the tube watching the Olympics. If she's not, she's watching Olympic trials.
I love the Olympics, and what I love most about the Olympics is people having pride of country. You know, they're representing their country. It's the best.
But nobody can attend, though. That's one thing. I just want to make that point. Only the athletes are going to be at the games. So if your son or daughter is competing in the Olympics, a once-in-a-lifetime venture, you can't go and see them because only the athletes are allowed. So that's pretty.
Even with the data that's coming out now that we'll
talk about that later in the show.
Yeah. But no, I love the Olympics. I just my feel, and there might be people that disagree with me. If you're representing your country, you need to really put your best foot forward, best face forward, and you really need to represent your country. And don't disrespect your flag, your anthem, your leaders. You may disagree politically, but save that argument for another day.
So you're talking about the lady who turned her back?
Man, I am.
I heard about that.
Where it's a lady or man, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody, but you don't show your tail. That's my daddy would say. Hey, son, don't show your tail, right? Just act like you got some sense and stand there respectfully, even if inside you're infuriated about a lot of things. We can have that conversation later, but I don't think that's the time or the place. And listening to that the last 24 hours, there's a backlash. I hope the person that did that has a conversation with the powers that be and they actually still get to compete. But
I saw the whole before that even happened, I saw them walking around I saw some other athletes walking around with activist athlete, and I was just turned off. I mean, I know everybody's getting into their thing, but harken me back to the days of when you watched a football game to see football.
That's it.
When you watched a basketball game to see basketball. I have my politics over here and I got my sports over here. I come over to watch my sports for entertainment and to get hyped behind my team. And I don't want to get over here and say, hey, do they have the right political affiliation?
No,
I don't want that in my sports. You're mixing some syrup in my cereal. Yeah. I don't put syrup in my cereal. I only put milk. Don't mix syrup in my cereal. So that was the feeling I had.
I mean,
and I just got to pull away from the TV and go. So really, and that was what happened last NBA season. I was like, I ain't got time for this.
No.
I mean, I wanted to see sports, and I like to see the sports. I like seeing people who are underdogs come back and win the game. They were 40 points down at half, and they came back, and that's what I like. I'm not really into this. They're making a statement about what's happening in our society. You make a statement when you slam dunk on somebody and you face them. Boom. That's what I like. That's when you make a statement on the court.
Who's this guy? Okay, so the guy.
Anyway,
this is almost like we have a sports show now, right? All of a sudden we have a sports show. This is awesome. Who's this young man who plays for the Milwaukee Bucks? He's like 7 foot tall. They're calling him the new Jordan. This guy is
player of the year
amazing. This cat is amazing. I like seeing the new guys. This Trey. I can't remember his last name. Young? Trey Young?
Trey. Yeah.
Oh,
Trey Young.
man, this kid came out of nowhere. Yeah. I'm sure he's been working real hard at it, but when he finally showed up on the scene, I'm like, man, these are some new faces that I'm just really digging. But, okay, so the whole Olympic thing, I remember as a kid watching the Olympics, and whenever our athletes were standing on the podium and they had their hand over their heart and they got the American flag going up, I'm like, this is America. They represent America. They represent me, right? Mm-hmm. This is the country that I love and that I get to live in. And, I didn't say, I don't know, maybe they're on the other side of the aisle, so I'm hating on the flag. I'm like, no, come on. Let's get back to, regardless of what you want or are frustrated with, just this little season, can we just lay that aside? Anyway,
people always have used that as an opportunity, and first of all, I mean, really, I don't have a problem if that's what you're going to do, and you're going to use your platform to express what you believe. And this is America. I mean, so there are people who are saying, okay, like I am, that all right, I'm not ready for that. I'm trying to watch sports. But you remember in the I guess it was '68 Olympics when the guys did the Black Power, and I think that's almost kind of on a different level than this, because that was in the midst of supporting my flag. So I'm saying on the thing, but when you turn your back on the flag, that seems to be a little bit different, because they're saying, in the middle of this, because like whether it was the Black Panthers or whatever, they weren't I would say that wasn't anti-American. I would say they were just standing for their cause. But when you turn your back, it's almost like you're anti. And so that's what I'm saying. It's a little bit different, maybe nuanced, and maybe it's just the way I'm looking at it. But I think that's a little bit different, you know.
I think those athletes are a little bit misguided. They're actually losing their voice. They're losing their influence when they do that because they're turning people off. Or if they would just go through that process and say, okay, and then when they're interviewed, say, you know, there's a lot of things I want to talk about and a lot of things that I'm not happy with regarding our country. But in this moment right now, I choose to honor. See, honor is something that we choose to do. It's not something necessarily that somebody deserves. It's the posture of our heart. And then, you know, keeping your voice, keeping your influence, and then later on using that influence at the right place at the right time to speak on those issues that are important to you. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, in your domain of expertise, in your area of where you're of professionalism, then that's great. And I think you should be humble enough to understand that when you're outside of that lane. And say, because otherwise some of the things that you're going to say because of your influence in one area is going to negatively affect a lot of other people illegitimately, because you might be wrong, you know. And I think that's why it's so important you kind of stay in your lanes and talk about the things that you know, because there's some things that I have an opinion on, and when I would talk about them in public, I have to make sure people understand that this is my opinion, because I'm not schooled in this, I'm not learned in this, but this is just my opinion, and I might have to change my views if I had more information.
Sure.
But when those people begin speaking authoritatively, like they know all these things, and you know, your expertise is in basketball, you know, your expertise is in tennis or gymnastics, you know, so make sure you put that in perspective.
That's right.
So not saying they could be right or wrong, but just saying that's the thing we got to consider. All right. So, but on today's show, while you weren't looking, then we talking about our society, because, you know, I'm 58, Richard's like 22, and lots of things have been changing over the years. And you know, it's getting, I mean, people like me are going, man, this is not the way I grew up, and a lot of things are different, so things are changing. So on today's show, while you weren't looking, we're going to talk about some things that have been changing while you weren't looking.
This is going to be good.
So we're going to do that. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to hit our agenda for the day and talk about what's happening in America while you're not looking. So we'll be right back after our break on Talk About Unity.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
Don't push me because I'm close to the edge.
I'm trying not to lose my head.
Hey, this is the Talk About Unity show where I bring the talk.
And I bring the unity.
And together we talk about unity. Unity is what matters.
Come on.
And right now in our country, that's what we've got to do. So we do that here at Talk About Unity on the Edge Radio Network. Be with us every week.
It's going to be awesome. It always is. And I tell you what, the more we seek first to understand, then be understood, we make progress.
And we like to do that. And that's why everybody's on the brink. We love what we do at Edge Radio, because everybody's on the edge. We bring them back from the edge, and we bring the unity. So we're just glad to Edge Radio Network every Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. Talk About Unity, because here at Edge Radio Network, truth still matters. And welcome back to Talk About Unity. And today we're going to talk about unity, and we're going to talk about what's been going on while you weren't looking. All right. So we think that you remember the shell game they used to have.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in the shell game they used to kind of move things around, and you had to guess which one it was under.
Yeah, that one.
You know, and so sometimes that's what it feels kind of like in America
With
you know?
COVID. With
COVID.
COVID.
Yeah, with COVID. Are we playing
Yeah.
a shell game?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
think
trying
so.
to. Because every time something happens, they give us more information, and they say, if you do this, then this will happen. And then you do this, and then that doesn't happen. And so it's been kind of strange. So the first topic that we're going to cover while you weren't looking is what's going on with COVID-19. And we're going to ask the question, are we defeating COVID-19? And what's been going on while you weren't looking? Because if you've been tracking this like I've been tracking it, then you'll notice that, man, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of misinformation that's happening out there. So here are the things we're going to cover on our show today. We got these 4 things. The first one is, are we defeating COVID-19? The second one we're going to talk about is the Supreme Court. Now they allowed a transgender ruling to stand at a lower court, which means which harkens up to a lot of different changes in the way we view the idea of male and female. Because that was a bathroom policy issue there. And because if you know, Target for a long time now has been saying, if you identify, you can use whichever restroom you want to. And there's been a lot of pushback on that. So we had a ruling, or the Supreme Court's failure to issue a ruling, let a lower court ruling stand. And we'll talk about that later. And then the other one is, what are our children learning about our country? And so you've been seeing a lot of fights in school board meetings. School board meetings have been like MMA matches these days.
Ooh,
I mean,
it is
they've been
hot.
getting like vicious. And so we're going to talk about why our public education system is in such flux right now. So that's happening. And then finally, we'll talk about what's happening in the country with crime on the rise. My goodness, crime is on the rise. And you remember when they were talking about, we're now seeing video recordings of police shootings. And they said that's because now we have videos. Well, now that we have video, we're also seeing just regular crime. I mean, you've seen some vicious stuff out there lately. If you go to the internet, we see crime of all types. Very just it's a bad thing that's going on. So let's go ahead and get started on the first topic we got when we talk about, are we defeating COVID? And there's this, LA County. Let's talk about, we're going to use them as an example because a lot of stuff is going on, but they've got new guidance for use of masks in LA County that just started this month. The health officials in Los Angeles County now urge people to wear masks indoors, in public, regardless of their vaccination status. And that's what's different. That's what's crazy, because they've been saying, if you get vaccinated, then you get freedom and you don't have to wear masks. But they've now recommended that regardless of your vaccination status, that you should wear masks to prevent and they blame the spread of the highly transmissible, as they call it, Delta variant of the coronavirus.
From India.
Yeah, from India. And this happens 2 weeks ago. Governor Newsom said, hey, we're opening up. So he reopened California. And all of this is coincidental to the fact that he's got a recall election going on.
You nailed it.
And he said, hey, let's open up. All that stuff I said about shutdown, I was just kidding.
Yeah, right.
So he opened back up. And so California is now experiencing a new level of freedom. I got a friend out there, Wayne, who runs, and he was excited about all that. But now they're coming back. And remember, this is just a recommendation. They're making a recommendation that you continue to wear masks. So it's not really a mandate. And but it doesn't match really what the CDC is now saying. Because CDC was the one who's saying, you don't need the mask. All right. So vaccinated people don't need it. But they're saying that indoors you still do. And unvaccinated people continue to wear your mask. And so that's kind of the thing. Now, here's the deal. So I've got these questions about this because while you weren't looking, then you might not have noticed. And Vince, if you put up the other pandemic graphic, I just wanted to talk about that for a second. Because that graphic basically shows exactly on the 27th, it says June 28th there, but June 27th, and I've been tracking this, they had that number there, said 80 deaths. 80 deaths, in order to get before, when we last had 80 deaths of coronavirus, you have to go back to like March 19th of 2020.
The beginning.
And we started in March, like March 9th and March 10th. So that means we've gone more than a year plus, year and 3-4 months. And this is now the lowest on the 27th of June, we had 80 deaths. So my question then is, what happens if we have no deaths? What happens if we do get to zero? And I keep asking that question. If we get to 0 deaths and we still have cases that are, we might have 1,000 cases in a day around the country, or if the cases, because sometimes the cases has been lower than 1,000 as well. Cases has been very low. So what will they recommend then? And so that's kind of my issue. What will they say about that? And so that's what I think is really important as we talk about that. Another question I have is it possible that this new Delta variant of the virus is more highly transmissible, less lethal, and it would be the thing to give everybody the immunity? I mean, because that's the thing. That's a question
interesting.
That should be asked, because here's the deal. They said that until we reached herd immunity, we were going to have problems. And so we had to reach herd immunity. So we're just over, I think, 50%. I think we just went over 50%. Mm-hmm. President Biden says we're not going to hit his goal of having 70% of the people vaccinated by July 4th. That's not going to happen. So we're at 50%. Yet our numbers are lower than they projected. When they said we needed herd immunity. They said at herd immunity, then we would have this thing kicked. So what if we have this thing kicked without the vaccination? What will they say? Because what I'm saying is, while you weren't looking, the numbers continually plummeted. And if you haven't been tracking it like I have daily, then you would not know it by the headlines. All the headlines on CNN everywhere says, new surge coming, and they identified, wow, we've now hit 600,000 cases. And so you have this idea that, wow, this thing is just bad and it's getting worse and it's getting worse. When in reality, it just isn't.
So the vaccines that people have received 6 months ago, does it cover the new variants?
And so now they're saying if you're fully vaccinated, I saw this in one of the articles, they said if you're fully vaccinated, then you're protected against the variants. And so their pitch right now is to say that if you are not vaccinated, then that's why we're concerned, because the variants can spread amongst those unvaccinated. And they identified 5 particular states. And so I wrote those down because I'm particularly going to track those numbers for those states over the next few weeks and months and see what happens in those states, because that's what they're pitching. Because that's one of the things that's happened while you aren't looking, is that they'll make these statements and then something opposite happens and nobody says anything. We just go forward. And that's been happening continually. And I go, what? But you said this way back.
It goes against the narrative.
Yeah. And so
So what about the people that got it, that was horribly sick for 3 days, that had a horrible headache? Some people that you're very familiar with.
Yeah, I know some of those. I know some people like that.
And then tested negative after 3 weeks.
Yes.
So I have that. Okay. I let the cat out of the bag. I got the, and so I recovered in 3 weeks. I have the antibodies. Do I still have the antibodies? And are my antibodies as good or better or worse than the vaccine?
And that's what's amazing, is that is never factored into the conversations that they're having. And I'm saying, because the science, if you follow the science, then they said that you develop immunities based on if you had it, you develop immunities. Mm-hmm. But you never hear anybody say anything about that.
No.
About it's possible that we had so many people get it. They never use that as a positive, that we had these large numbers way back in February and late last year. We had these extremely high numbers. They never talked about, wow, we've got immunity of this many millions of people, because this many millions of people actually got it.
And recovered.
And recovered. And so we never hear about that.
Right.
So, and all they talk about is, no, but if you haven't gotten vaccinated, you need to be vaccinated. What about those people who did have the headaches, like tall guys, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And remember, there was a guy, was that you, who was saying they tested for antibodies and they still had them? Somebody told me that the doctor told them. Oh no, I know who it was.
It was me.
Yeah, it was a friend of mine. He was saying he was trying to decide whether or not to get the shot.
Mm-hmm.
And he had it. He'd had COVID, and he went to the hospital, and they said, "When did you have it?" He said, "I had it 8-9 months ago." They said, "Oh no, your antibodies are gone."
Really?
He said, "Well, can you test me for the antibodies?" They tested for the antibodies. Boom, he had them. And so he said, "I am not getting the shot." It was 9 months later. He still had the antibodies, and so he was good. He said, "I'm not getting the shot."
Yeah.
And so that's the issue. I mean, so we're looking at this the the COVID outbreak, and these are really good questions. But one thing that's true, though, the numbers. I mean, if you go to Bloomberg, which is what I've been tracking for the last year and a half, you go to Bloomberg, they've got a great website because at least once you understand the website, you got a consistent way of looking at the data. And man, if you look at that graph, and it just shows you, and it shows you steep plummeting, and even now. And so hopefully we'll continue that direction, and it'll be interesting to see. But make sure you keep looking so we don't have to see what happens while you're not looking. All right. So we're going to be back with our other 3 topics as we come back after this break here on Talk About Unity While You're Not Looking.
While you're not looking.
Edge Radio TV is holding auditions for new show hosts. Are you a subject matter expert, professional, influencer, book author, thought leader, or business owner with an educational or motivational platform? Then we want to meet you. Send a link of some of your work to edgeradio20@gmail.com and be sure to put audition in the subject line. Join the Edge Radio TV family. Edge TV, because truth still matters.
Are you a small business owner concerned about the downturn in the economy? Top business leaders like Mattress Mac and Warren Buffett will tell you that now is the time to promote your business more than ever. People need your services. Your business needs an edge. Learn about special advertising packages for small businesses right here on Edge Radio. Find out more, give us a call at 281-744-0446. That's 281-744-0446. Edge, because truth still matters.
Aren't you tired of not getting what you want in bed?
Are you ready to spice things up behind those closed doors?
Woo! We're here for you every hump day at 7 p.m.
This is Sex on the Edge with Jen and Hen. I'm Jennifer Reeves.
And I'm Hendrik Scott, and we are professional licensed sex therapists.
So remember to watch us Wednesday at 7 p.m. on Edge Radio TV, just in time for sexy time.
Welcome back to Talk About Unity. And while we were on the break there, we had a really good discussion, which will segue into our next topic here. And so I'm going to ask you, what was the question you asked? What sport?
What is there a sport where that girls historically are better at it than men? Is there a sport? And you said,
and I said, but I'm going to preface that with a statement about up until I was in, and by the way, to give you a little of my sports expertise, I was the district champion in 100 and 200 meters in my district.
You were and still are a bad man.
Yeah. So let me tell you, that tells you how fast I was in high school. Up until I got to high school, there was this group of girls who could beat me running. We had some girls in.
Yes, we did.
Man, those girls ruled. Matter of fact, if you look in the Texas State record book, we had girls who won. They went to state 3 years in a row and won the 4x100 meters. And so they were. So there's a time and place when girls are faster than and can beat athletically, or I think ahead of boys. That changes though about after puberty. Sometime after high school, when you get in high school, that changes. And it just continues on. So that's why you have men in the NFL and you don't have women in the NFL. But based on his question, though, Vince, our local youth representative, giving his viewpoint, he said tennis. And so he said he'd die on that hill, too. He said he thinks women's tennis, they could compete with the men. But I was like, if you watch Djokovic and those guys serve, man, that ball is coming so fast that I don't even think they would be able to return most of the serves. And so they would probably get aced so many times. But he said he'd die on that hill, so I guess that would be one. But so that's our topic today as we segue. We're talking about men and women, and is there such a thing as women's sports anymore? Because of a ruling that happened just this past weekend, the Supreme Court did not overturn a lower court ruling that allowed a transgender student to use the restroom associated with, and I'm going to say her gender identity because it was she was a female and she began to identify as a male. And the school, in that school district, I think that place is, and if you could go ahead and display that graphic, but it was in Gloucester County School Board. They had said that no, she was not allowed to use the male restroom. And so this has been a court case, and it actually started in 2015, and it took, so as you see, it's taken a long time. She graduated in 2017, and so it's still been in the court. And of course, Title IX bars, and they were using Title IX because Title IX bars sex discrimination in education. And also the U.S. Constitution requires that people be treated equally under the law. And so they were using that as the basis for their argument. And so with the Supreme Court not reversing that ruling, then it's kind of like a victory for transgender rights because they're saying because the lower court said you acted unlawfully in prohibiting the student from using the restroom that affiliated with their identity. And so that's the issue, and that's why we were talking about the sports angle on this thing, because if you get to that point then and you say that you have to allow this, and if you have to allow formerly males who are now identifying as females to participate in female sports, what happens to female sports?
Well, we were arguing that men dominate the sports world, although there are incredible female athletes, but when you put the best male athlete in a sport against the best female in that sport,
two different worlds.
Most of the time, the male's going to win. Carl, I really think some of this is going to play out, especially in the high school and in the college ranks. But really, when you get into high school, if there's a guy who is identifying as a girl and has not had, let me use a word everybody can relate to, did not have the plumbing changed, and they try to go shower with the girls, then all of a sudden they've exposed themselves, or a young man who's living in that universe makes a pass at a girl in a locker room when they're changing. Man, there's going to be lawsuits. I mean, those lawsuits are going to go crazy. And so, it's going to play itself out. Enough school districts get sued because something like that happens. Because that will happen. It's going to happen. So,
and those are some of the consequences that we can logically expect to see. I think there's also a whole lot of unintended consequences that we don't even realize at this point because we haven't gone down that road. And so one of the things that has happened, and it's happened here in Texas as well as states like Florida, they've actually enacted laws. They enacted laws that prevented transgenders from participating in those sports.
That's right.
Some of the other opportunities that people have seen happen is that they've tried to create. Matter of fact, because what happened at this school in Gloucester County, the school, which I think to their credit, offered an opportunity for this student to use a quote unisex restroom, so
Trying to accommodate.
them.
Yep.
And that they said no.
Nope.
And the student said, no, I want to be able to use this particular one. So you see there's a particular agenda there that that they're trying to achieve. And
I'm not trying to throw rocks at anybody, but the one thing that really breaks my heart is some of these girl athletes have their entire life, whether it is club volleyball or track or any other kind of sport, softball or whatever it is, and they were ranking at the top of their particular athletic thing that they're doing, and then all of a sudden this male athlete who is transitioning or whatever you want to call that, all of a sudden enters into that arena. Then these girls that have had scholarships that were at the top of their field, all of a sudden they're falling way down. They're not even on the radar screen anymore. Man, that's a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
You know?
And I haven't met anybody who supported that, who supported allowing them to do that. And I really would like to have a scholarly discussion, because I just can't understand that anybody would give that argument merit over allowing them to have, because if you want to do that, understand, but have your own sports grouping. So we would then have males,
that makes
we'd have
sense.
females, and then we'd have this other division, because you don't fit in one of these then, and and if you really feel like you can't be in the one that was genetically yours from birth, then you can't say I'm going to go transition into another one, because that's like me saying, okay, if I participate in, I probably could have been the Olympic champion, because I looked at some of the times that these women are running in the sprints. I'm going, I ran that in high school. I could be.
Carly, you're messing with me. I can just see you with a wig. Put some makeup on. Boy, that'd be ugly.
You don't have to. You just got to identify. I identify. You don't have to. These days, you just identify. All right.
Oh, wait, before you go, people are internally identifying, and I'm not making fun of people. I'm really not. This guy actually did this. He went. They had, of course, his own video. This guy internally identified at the IRS office. He goes into the IRS office, Social Security office, and he says, I internally identify as a 65-year-old. He's 45 because I want to start drawing my check. The IRS didn't go for that. They said, no, we're not doing that. Hey, when it comes down with the rubber meets the road, when the money starts affecting the government, I think they're going to draw some lines. I know I'm making light of it. Bottom line is, this is a journey that a lot of people are on, and hey, I'm praying for them. I love everybody. I just don't like to see these young men, young ladies lose their opportunities because this new thing that has entered our sphere of athletics.
All right, so we're halfway through our show, and we've got about 15 minutes left in the entire show. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to cover our last two topics. We're going to get through them in a hurry because we got some understanding we need to pass on to you all about topic 3 and topic 4. We're going to do that as we come back from talk about unity. Yeah.
When people stop talking to each other, society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters.
Hey y'all, I'm Robin B.
And I'm Dr. Kiva.
And we just want to know
how you living?
Join us every Monday
at noon Central Standard Time
here on Edge Radio TV. Take care.
When people stop talking to each other, society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters.
Sebastian Canizares, where's he at? Oh, good. We're going to hear from him. He's going to deliver some remarks. He's really doing a great job. And we've got some other of our civic literacy efforts. It's crucial to ensure that we teach our students how to be responsible citizens. They need to have a good working knowledge of American history, American government, and the principles that underlie our Constitution and Bill of Rights. And these efforts are needed. A recent survey found that only 2 in 5 American adults can correctly name the 3 branches of government. More than a third of Americans cannot name any of the rights that are protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And in 2018, a poll found that only 36% of Americans could pass a multiple choice version of the citizenship tests that our naturalized citizens have to take before becoming American citizens.
Hey, and we're back here on Talk About Unity, and we've been covering some of these topics that have been making big change in our country while you weren't looking. And we've covered a couple of topics, and now we're on this third one, and we're talking about while you weren't looking, what's happening in public education. And so there have been many fights over the past few weeks about critical race theory coming into our schools. But there are other issues, such as the one that you just heard Governor Ron DeSantis talking about, and that is just the lack of educating in our educational system. And he's pushing for a civic reform bill in the state of Florida, which he, as you heard him say there, would put Florida on the path to becoming the #1 state in the country in civic literacy. And so while public education has seemed to slip in a lot of our schools around the country, some of the states are enacting some policies along these lines to ensure that they do not lose those things. Many of the debates that we've been having have been about what we are teaching in our schools. But I think one of the biggest issue is how we're teaching the things that we're teaching in our schools. And I think it made some of those points in the video. And so let's talk about that for a second, because he made the point that 2 in 5 Americans can't name the 3 branches of government.
Wow.
And so that says something, because that's not something that has to do with the state of our society. That has to do with how we're teaching education, because they should have gotten that in the classroom, regardless of everything else. They should have gotten that. Another statement they made, that more than half of Americans can't name one of the rights protected by the First Amendment. More than half of Americans can't name one of the rights protected in the First Amendment. That's kind of bad, that you'd have that. And then it said 36% of Americans, only 36% of Americans could pass the citizenship test that others have to take who are not American citizens in order to become American citizens.
Man, are we living in the twilight zone?
And here's the thing, and I think what's important for us to understand is that so all of these fights that we're having in public right now about whether critical race theory and race in society and things like this is what we're doing. We're allowing a generation of Americans to grow up not getting the basic stuff they need so that they can have an informed opinion about how we should be approaching issues of our society. Think about it. If we've got a country that's based on those Bill of Rights and the Constitution, it's going to be important for us to understand, because if I go out and protest and I don't understand those basic issues of rights and freedom and citizenship. If I don't understand that, then what am I really protesting? I'm protesting, much like my 4-year-old grandson, that I don't have what I want right now.
Right.
And I have no basis really for knowing what I should have. And so I think that's our problem, and we need to kind of get a hold on that. Richard, what do you think?
Well, I think everything goes back down, boils down to the home. When we first started having kids, I have three amazing adult kids now. But when we had our first son, Amy and I had this conversation. So are we going to homeschool? A lot of our friends are homeschooled. A lot of them are not. Homeschool, are we going to do private school, or are we going to be involved in the public school system? Well, we first started out in a private Christian school, great school, but I felt so convicted. I did not go to homeschool, private school. I was in public school. I love public school. And I told Amy, I said, I believe that we need to make a difference and we need to have influence in our community. And I want our kids to be well-rounded and interact with people from all spectrums of our society. And I said, so if we're going to have our children in public school, then we are going to be active participants in their education. And if there's things that need to be brought up or talked about with administrators and teachers and coaches, then we're going to fulfill our duty and obligation as parents to be engaged in that. Best decision we ever made.
Yeah, and that's what's tough, because in this day and age, when everything is about go out and get as much as you can, get all you can, then I think in the home, like you're saying, we fail to realize that responsibility for education still lies with the parents.
Yeah,
it lies on the parents. And so, yes, you might choose a school and expect the school to do certain things, but you're responsible. And because if that school is not meeting the responsibilities of education, you got to do it. I mean, and that's why I think you've seen a swell in homeschool education,
right,
and things like that right now, because more and more people are realizing that I've got to do this because I can't expect them to do it because it's really not happening.
Right.
It's really not happening. So, all right. So lots there. And by the way, in interest of make sure everybody understands my view on this, I'm a former school teacher.
You sure?
As a former school teacher, and I went to public school. Today, if I had kids like my 4-year-old grandson, I would homeschool him. I would homeschool him. I would say, come on, sit down. Which, by the way, and with the grandson, that's what I'm doing anyway. He's sitting down, learning his ABCs. And here's one, and we're going to move on to our next topic, but I got to tell this story because it's both funny and it talks about how learning takes place, how kids learn. So Beckett's 3, he'll be 4 next month, and he's potty trained. He's proud of being potty trained. He didn't quite make it to the toilet one day this past week. He didn't quite make it. And so I asked him about it when I went in and I saw that there was something on the floor and he didn't quite make it. And he said, well, but I spread it around. And I just figured out, he was saying, I spread it around. I was like, what did you use to spread it around? A tissue? I said, what do you mean you spread it around? And what he meant by spreading it around, he'd seen me mopping. And with a mop, you really just put it down and you're like, he thinks that you're just spreading it around. You're not really cleaning your space. So he thought, I'm just going to spread it around. So he thought it was taken care of. I was like, and I'd never figured out what he was talking about today. It just hit me. I went, spread it around.
No.
That's what he thought he was doing. You just spread it around. So, so education, we got to do the education thing. All right. So let's move on to our final topic as we get ready to close out the show. Topic number 4, crime is on the rise.
Man.
And violent crime has spiked. It started 2020, same time that COVID hit, and it just has gone straight up. And so far, preliminary data shows that homicides increased somewhere between 25 and nearly 40% last year. And that's the largest year-to-year jump on record. That trend has shown no signs of reversing in the first few months of 2021. So let's go ahead and let's roll tape their events and let's look at what it's saying here.
Violent crime is way up and claiming victims here in Los Angeles at a rate we haven't seen in decades. Already this year, at least 143 people have been murdered. Hundreds more have been shot. Our investigative reporter Eric Leonard has been tracking this alarming trend and what's behind it.
Dozens of shots fired by 3 gunmen during a drive-by shooting in South LA, recorded on security and front door cameras. Amazingly, none of the more than 70 bullets fired struck anyone. But bullets did hit their target Monday night. This was the scene on West 29th Street in the Jefferson Park neighborhood where 19-year-old Rayshawn Spite was murdered, one of the latest victims of the surge in killings and shootings that seems to have no end. This map shows the 143 murder scenes in L.A. since the first of the year. Homicides are up 22% compared with this time last year and 43% above this time 2 years ago, sadly consistent with the rise in other kinds of crime.
Homicides and shooting violence continues to be our most pressing issue.
Chief Michael Moore told the police commission this week that more than 600 people have been shot since the first of the year, a rate of gun attacks that have outpaced last year by nearly 60%. He says next year's budget includes more money for social services directed at gang members, who he says are responsible for many of the recent killings.
That there are substantial resources being brought to bear for both those areas for prevention and intervention services.
As for the potential causes, the pandemic and loss of jobs and increasing conflicts within the illegal drug trade share a portion of the blame. But what about speculation that anti-police protests and political action have led to less aggressive police work?
I don't think that there was one single explanation for why gun violence rose.
Crime data analyst Jeff Asher, who used to crunch numbers for the CIA and now advises police and government on crime data, says national numbers show it's been happening almost everywhere, from big cities to small cities. So he discounts the idea that pushes for police reform have played a significant role.
I don't really buy the police morale issue or that a change in arrests or proactive policing. You can say it was the protests for Los Angeles or New York or Chicago or Milwaukee or Minneapolis, but why Omaha? Why Shreveport? Why Lubbock, Texas? Why did cities under 10,000 have murder go up 20-something%?
There's also the question of guns. The LAPD's crime data shows that while officers have been told to make fewer traffic stops, they're actually finding far more illegally carried guns during those stops, up 60% so far this year, up 70% compared with 2 years ago, and the records show more people are being arrested on illegal weapons charges. Detectives are also making more murder arrests. Those are up 40% in recent months. I'm investigative reporter Eric Leonard, NBC4 News.
Oh, and I think it's so important. When we look at that and you look at that video, it just boggles my mind when they refer to all the causes and they never ever, just as we did in the previous segment, they never ever say that it could be the family. The family's never part of why we see this spike in crime, that we have broken homes, families, and we just don't have the parenting necessary. And so, but here's some other things they talked about in that video. 143 murders in LA at this point so far this year, shootings, over 600 shootings. And so when you put these things in perspective, and that's while you're not looking, 600 shootings, and we will, and this is the problem, that we will spend, and all the forces and all the direction of the media will be on this one thing because a quote unquote white officer shot a black, and we'll have 400, 500 shootings over here, and nobody will care.
Because nobody's looking.
And nobody's looking. I mean, it's just, that just boggles my mind, you know, that happens. And so we got some issues, and we got to deal with those. And I think it goes back to what you were talking about with the family issues.
Well, I've revised the national anthem, the last line of the song, "Or the land of the free criminal and the home of the brave civilian." Are you serious? People are running rampant because they know they can get by with it. You know, there's well, we need to get the guns off the streets. We need to get the guns off the streets. Actually, what we need to do is enforce the laws that are already on the books. If you are a felon, you cannot own a gun. And in that video we just watched, it said that the contributing factors are illegal drugs and gang violence. Well, if you go and you dig into the people that are selling illegal drugs or are involved in most of the gang violence, they got a record. They have no business having a gun. Go in and confiscate all those guns. Don't take away my gun.
Yeah, there was a video I sent to my friend just this past week where a shooting happened in Oakland, and when the police and the ambulance showed up for the to render their help, then there was a crowd formed. And people got up on top of the ambulance.
Are you serious?
And they started twerking. And they twerk. And there's video out there on the internet. It shows that. And we had previously had a discussion with my friend who lives out there in California, and I said, you can talk about guns all you want to. If we don't fix the home, this is the kind of behavior
that's
that
the problem.
I said, there's no legislation in the world that will prevent that kind of behavior. There's no legislation. There's only mom and dad, or some mentor, somebody who's going to do some counseling and who can tell people that's not the way you behave in public. And so that's it. We've covered some issues here on today's show. And these are things that why you're not looking. So you need to be looking, because these are the things that are happening out there in our society, and we got to do something about them.
Carlin, I think you said it's got to happen in the home, but don't underestimate the influence that you've had on students as being a teacher and a mentor. Sometimes it takes folks like you to bridge that gap, to really fill in those spaces where the influence, the good influences aren't there. You make a difference. Keep going, man.
Hey, and so it's people like you, as you listen to this and you take these things to heart and you find a way that you can help in your community. And because that's what we're about here on Talk About Unity, how you can be effective in your community. And that's what we do here at Edge Radio Network. We're glad to have you this week, and we'll see you again next week as we talk about unity in our community.